Just a second. Just to close all the doors here. Just close all the doors so that I'm sure that people don't enter.
Elsie, can you open up now?
I think people can just come in.
Oh, can they? Okay.
Yeah, so I think people are coming in now.
Great.
So just waiting now.
So perhaps I'll just start and welcome our first two participants and let everybody know that we will take a few minutes to allow people to arrive. Hi, my name is Karen Downs, and this is the first of our series of Leading with Grace and Resilience, but I'll make a more formal announcement very shortly as we gather our participants. And here's beautiful Thais sitting with me, ready for the conversation. I'm in Costa Rica, and Thais is in Brazil, just 50 kilometers outside of Rio de Janeiro. So we're in Latin America, and it's a very different situation in Latin America than it is in other parts of the world. Certainly here in Costa Rica, they've opened up all of their borders. Tourists are coming in from countries all over the world, whether they are brave enough or feel safe enough or feel that this is a time for them to travel is uncertain, but certainly Costa Rica is a very different experience for me being here in this climate at this time, having arrived 3 weeks ago from London, which is now in a second lockdown. So welcoming everybody as you come in, and thank you for joining what we consider a very important conversation today, which is Leading with Grace and Resilience. So I'm just give us a couple more minutes before I formally begin and introduce Thais.
Okay, just 1 second.
And we can also use the chat. We can also use the chat. And if people can put in, perhaps introduce yourself as to where you're from and anything about yourself that you'd like to share, please do so as others are coming in. Hey, Emma, I see you have joined us. Emma, haven't seen you for such a long time. Thanks for being here and joining this conversation. Beatrix, Helena, Ida. Hey, Emma. So, oh, thank you. Thanks, Beatrice. You're from Brazil also. Well, welcome. I know Emma is joining us from where? Actually, I don't know where you are, Emma. Where are you joining us from? Brazil. Helena, you're from Portugal. And Emma, your son's basketball practice, fabulous in Norway and staying as long as you can. What an effort, as we women do, multitasking. Beautiful to have you here. So I'd like to, we're 3 minutes past the hour, so perhaps we'll get started. Elsie, can you just post a note to me if you think we need to wait any longer in the chat? Or unmute yourself. Elsie is our co-host for this event. Elsie's in London. And Elsie, shall we get started? Till 5 past, perfectly. Okay, I'll just give it another minute. Thais, how is it? Is it it's raining here in Costa Rica? Perhaps I just start with how is the weather at the very superficial level of how things are in Brazil right now?
Yeah, here it's raining also. It has been raining the last week, and which is not common for this type of the year because it has been cloudy and not too hot. And we are in November. Normally, temperatures are at least 5 points higher than they are now. But it's very nice not to have so much heat. And the plants and the forests and all the streams and rivers are happy, because we have had a month or so of dry weather and of drought, and so this has been helping to recover that. But other than that, it's we are in the forest and everything is so green. So and the birds and the flowers all are happy.
Very good. Good to know. We're here in Costa Rica. It's been raining for 2 weeks, which is very uncommon because, of course, the hurricane came through and severely impacted Nicaragua, and the rains have come down here in Costa Rica. So the rains are going on for much longer than normal and heavier. So many people have been devastated by the floods, and on top of the devastation of COVID, where they've lost their jobs, they've lost their income. So it's a very harsh time for a lot of people here. But it is, as you said, it's also beautiful to be in the jungle and in this amazing part of the world. So I think we'll get started. So welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this conversation. I just wanted to begin firstly, those of you who don't know me, my name is Karen Downs. I'm the founder of the Flourish Initiative. I'm also a co-founder of an organization called FemQ, which is where I first met Thais. And I'll say a little more about that shortly, but the relevance and the importance of this conversation for me is why I've launched this series of webinars, is this notion of leading with grace and resilience, which I've been leading a 5-day in-person retreat for the last 5 years. And of course, with COVID this year, those events were cancelled. But the conversation is ever more critical. So whilst the events were cancelled, the importance of the conversation has escalated. And I was looking for ways to find the opportunity to bring these amazing women that I know who are, as you've seen from the list of forthcoming events, and today with Thais in Brazil, they're from all over the world, but they're women that I've come to know. And I certainly call this leading with, all of them, a lead with grace and resilience. I think in the past, since lockdown, since we began knowing and dealing with the coronavirus, COVID-19, it's had a severe impact on everyone, but particularly what it's escalated is the disparities, the inequalities, but also the inadequacies of many leaders around the world who have not managed the healing, who have not managed the care and compassion, empathy, such as Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand. They have not managed this crisis or the crises we are now facing. And it's very important today, especially with Thais in this conversation, because Thais has been working for decades around gender and climate and the environment. So my own background is as a healer. In the 80s, I trained as a healer and worked with women for 13 years in developing a company, an aromatherapy company. I learned to build a business through compassion, through building community and what I call, or would be termed now, conscious leadership, and then moved to London in the early part of this century in 2001. And been working in this area of gender, which is the commitment that and values that Thais and I share for 3 decades. And I have an organisation, as I said, the Flourish Initiative, which is all about human flourishing. So that's me, but most importantly and more importantly is our guest today, who is Thais Corral. Thais is the founder of Sinal de Valle, which I had the privilege of going to in 2016 after we did our FemQ event. Thais sat down with me after we'd finished our event in Berlin, and she said, "What are you up to now, Karen?" And I said, "I really don't know. This has taken everything to produce this event, and I feel like I've lost joy in my life." Thais said, "Come to Brazil and experience joy." And what was amazing is when I arrived, there was a workshop that neither of us had actually known about, which was called The Joy of Being. Was that the name of it, Thais? It was all about joy. And what is amazing about Thais is that she invited me into that workshop. It was all done in Portuguese. I was the only English speaker, and everyone was getting very, very annoyed at Thais translating the whole of the workshop for me when it was supposed to be meditative and spiritual practices. But that is who this woman is. She's an activist. She's a fighter. She's not a fighter in the traditional sense, but she's a fighter for justice. She's a fighter for equality. She stands for the good and the true in the world. And I'm so proud to call her my friend. So great to have you, Thais, today. So Thais has got many, many acclaims and credentials to her name and to her work. But most importantly, she was a founder of the Women's Environment and Development Organization, WEDO. And one of the things that is very commonly said about Thais is not only has she been an activist for the environment and for gender for 3 decades, but one of the phrases I saw in an article, Thais, that I'd love to talk to you about today is, "It's useless," this is a quote from you, "it's useless to give power to women and continue repeating the present patterns that negatively affect them." And I think that's one of the things that I saw when I visited you and spent the month in Sinal de Valle, is that you were breaking the patterns. And you personally have broken those patterns. So I wanted to start the conversation today because I know that my own experience, Thais, is that we've all had upbringings, education, teachings, influences and experiences that have had us adapt to the patriarchal system that is actually, or the economic systems that are actually destroying our planet and inhibit our full participation as women with leading with grace and resilience. But you have been breaking those patterns down. So I wanted to start today's conversation with the question, is that there may have been a moment, Thais, if you can think back, whether it was through your parenting, and I know how special your mother's influence was for you in your life, when there was a point in time where you made a decision, like an epiphanal moment, where something shifted for you out of an insight or a stand or a declaration that you made, and everything started to shift for you and your life. Can you remember that moment?
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen. And first of all, I feel so honored and appreciative that you call me a friend, because we developed a friendship from that intimacy that I think that women, we are able to have with each other, no, not only with women, but especially with women. And I think that moment in which we talked about the joy, and that we could do that experiment together of refining joy, it was for me without any doubt a great experience, because we kind of talked so much about that, And I think that for me, there were many moments. It's difficult to point one, but I think that there was one thing that always was like a line in my life. And these days, right now that we have so much space for reflection, because so much of what we believed that would be there forever, or that we kind of built as something that we could stand on, have somehow shaked or disappeared, or have been shaked because of what happened in the world. I think is that sense of freedom, of really not having the possibility of inventing your life, or listening to the voices that the voice that you really distill as true, because there are so many influences. You have our parents, like what society wants from us, what we kind of how to make it, And I think that especially women, no, we have even more that, because somehow we have to prove so many things, no, being good mothers, being good wives, being good careers in our career. And I think that what I saw over my life in my mother and also in other women that I really admire is that drive to prove themselves all the time, you know, and that made so many of us also so tired that nothing was left, you know, like the joy of being, the energy for the joy of being, that inner energy that we all have was not available for us. So for me, I think, but a very important moment, that shift, was when my mentor, which was really a fighter, this American like a woman, no, uh, Bella Abzug, that fought for the civil rights movements, for the women's movement, that was like a queen of the world. And when I saw that she died 20 years ago, 22 years ago, 32 years ago, I think, 22 years ago, but so bitter, no, about all that she had thought that we would conquer, or that the world would recognize, and the world didn't, you know. And that was like a wake up for me. In that sense, I said, I want to kind of be able to have a life in which I appreciate every day, and celebrate whatever we achieve as a game, no? And because this joy of being, and it's so nice that you start for that at the end, is what make our lives happy every day. Because I think that so much of what has happened in the world is for this. We are always in places where whatever you have is not enough. No, this continuous insatiable potential that I think is kind of the pattern of our society, that has made us to make so much damage to our earth, to other people, to be dominant. And I think we as women, because we kind of give birth, and that we have like this life that is more indoors, we kind of find a joy in little things. And I think that is little things that we say in the living, no, in the present living. And I think that this is so important to somehow to reconnect with, you know. So for me, when I saw what happened with Bella and what I saw in front of my life, I said to myself that I would like to have to taste life as it is every day, you know, even if you don't achieve the maximum, even if you are not recognized for everything, but to really to be true to yourself and be true to the things that you really care for, no? And that changed my life. And I think that 20 years later, I feel much more ready for the third part of my life.
And Thais, thank you. And that joy of being is who and what you resonate. And it is your way of being, that's for sure. And one of the things I know that I experienced and know to be true about you is how dearly or how true you hold your deep spiritual practices as essential for the work you do. I'd love you to talk, because that was certainly my experience of being at Sanal Diwali as well, is the meditative and reflective and spiritual practices you've included into your team as part of the work that you do. How essential? Could you speak a little bit about what you've discovered and what impact you see that makes with those that you train, but also your own life and what it does to the community, having those deep spiritual practices?
Yes, I think there are many practices, no, and I don't want to present one that is the one, because I think people have its own. But what I feel is essential, no, is that we kind of create spaces in our life to really reconnect to this essence that we are, no, And as we shared, no, Karen, that you have the candles and the little corners in which there is beauty and practices of that you cultivate really to reconnect to that essence. No, and of course there is meditation and there is walking and there is in nature and there is just being connected to animals, that I think it's also something very that reconnected you to that intimacy, that place, that inside place, that is critical for you to to see that what is eternal, no, in you and in everything, because those moments of connection is the ones that hold you to your truth, that hold you to the good in the world. And I think these practices that we call inner practices, but I would say that would be more like human practices, are available to all of us, and they can be part of our lives. So I was reading a quote one of these days, and it said exactly that, that we have to keep to be attentive, no, not to be drawn into things that bring you out of yourself, and because it's that a place, that intimate place, which is going to hold you through that life that we want to have. Because of course, I mean, we have no control. No, who would imagine that we would have COVID? Who would imagine what is going to happen like next year? But we have the possibility of living like in connection to the moment. In all spiritual practices, all talk about being at the moment. Start from where you are and kind of appreciate wherever you are, even if you are suffering. So at Sinal, what we kind of try to cultivate is that community in which we are appreciative of the help we have, of the capabilities of people, the people that are here with us, because all that we do depend on that. So is that appreciation for what we have, and how we start from there. And people talk about these creative powers, these powers of creation, and certainly I think a very important power is that power to be in that silence in which we can reconnect to all the powers we have, because we are very powerful. We have all that we need. We have intelligence, we have energy, we have the capability of communicate and connected to almost everything. So these all are very important resources that we already have. You don't need others. And so when we kind of connected to these spaces, we immediately find these things that are inherent to us, which are joy and peace, which are the basis for happiness. So that's what we cultivate. We cultivate that space inside. Of course, some people we have meditation, we have some exercise, we have yoga, we have Tai Chi, we have so people here are drawn to different practices, and we cultivate all of them. But the most important thing is to have that inner connection as the basis of your life.
And one of the things, Thais, that I certainly experienced and saw that you've built is what I would call leading with the feminine values and principles. You were someone that decades ago was talking about the connection of women, and including women, in association to climate change and the environment. And that's certainly you as a leader in an environmental movement, a regenerative movement of what you've created in Sinal Diwali. Comes from those feminine principles, because my experience was that you were very much like a matriarch, or the traditional what would have been called a matriarch of the family, but your community, and I can so relate to it, having built my own business with women and found what a difference that is in working in organisations that I have in the last 15 years in male-dominated environments. What would you say as, with all those differences in spiritual practices, with you bringing that feminine and grace into the community, Thais, what do you think holds or pulls people to that environment, aside from you're doing good work for the planet? There is something about the energy you bring, the grace you bring to your leadership. How would you describe grace, or what it is that you think you bring as a woman?
I think it has so much to do about how you named your initiative, and also what I think Sinal is about, that flourishing, I think Sinal has been a place for flourishing, and it's flourishing for myself. I consider that I flourished so much through this land, through the work we did, through the people that arrived, because we always flourish, when you observe nature is in an ecosystem, that enables that. No flourishing occurs in isolation. It's very rare, even when we think it is an isolation, when we focus on it, there was always something that enabled that together, Even in the desert, there was, if there is one little cactus there was something that enabled that, Even if there was no water, but there was the sun, there was something. So what I saw is that, there is that intent in Sinal since the beginning. Of course, I carry that intent also, but I think all the ones that arrived and the place itself has carried that intent of flourishing. And I think that was what attracted people and made people to stay, that they know that the place is not about an illusion, or when I say an illusion, there are so many initiatives. Sometimes initiatives, they have a projection of something. I don't say that this is wrong, but more it's centered outside of the personalities, but as something that is for all, for all to flourish. Because at Sinal, I would say it's also for the animals to flourish, for the plants to flourish, and for the people that arrive here to flourish. I think this creates a very, I would say, vital energy field, that people want to stay, because they sense something very true and very vital, to which their inner essence relates, and then they know that something will come out of that is good for their lives, and that's what I've seen here. But I think the most important is to look into how to look into this thread, how to be a steward of this flourishing, of everything together, because I think it's an integral field of flourishing. I don't know if this is too abstract, but this is the best I can describe it.
And absolutely, Thais, I so appreciate you pointing to that, because flourishing, to me, when I created the name, the Flourish Initiative, one, it takes initiative to flourish. It doesn't happen in and of itself. It is an integral and complex notion, but it also, for me, is feminine. When people say, what's the difference between thriving and flourishing? It's almost for me that thriving is about pushing forward and always being out. It feels like a more masculine energy to me. And as resilience does, it takes resilience to flourish as well. We look into Mother Nature and we see the cycles and the seasons. And we don't always honour these seasons in our own lives. So we see the seasons in Mother Earth, but our own lives often don't reflect that. And I see it in businesses versus your community, flourishing with the seasons and with the land and listening to the cycles and the flow. Whereas in businesses just want perpetual summers, the harvest every month. They don't listen or can't tolerate a winter. So when we talk about flourishing, for me, it's seasonal, and we require those times of reflection and hibernation. And unfortunately, COVID whilst, as you mentioned earlier, has given us space and time to do inner work, many people I've been speaking to this week are feeling filled with despair because the isolation now is too much. The isolation and the going inwards and the restriction of socializing and being intimate and having our senses stimulated is actually overwhelming people. So given you and I are both in particular parts of the world where if I look out, I'm looking out at a jungle and it's flourishing in the rain and it's flourishing in this season. But for many people, they're looking out onto cityscapes. What would you say? Not everyone's going to join us in Costa Rica or Brazil, Thais, and it's a difficult time for many to consider even flourishing when they're so filled with despair. What has gotten you through those difficult times where you might have been not in a pandemic and not in this crisis, but certainly in times of despair where it felt like you couldn't continue? What have you called on to bring your resilience, bring up your resilience?
I mean, not only what happened to me, but what also I've heard from people, over the years. I think that something that brings us resilience on you feel empty and not knowing, I mean, from where to draw resources, to continue. I think it's always to somehow connect it to others and to connect to others that maybe you can do something too, because I've seen, in this pandemic, there are so many stories, of people that from a very difficult situation of losing their jobs or being isolated or even losing people, I think that there are stories in very, very inspiring and moving stories of resilience, of people that in the midst of these losses, or they kind of came out and went, helping or offering something to someone, because when you I think of the feminine, you're talking about the feminine qualities, but one of the feminine qualities that I think are so important in these times is that surrendering, that surrendering to whatever is happening, and you offering yourself to something that you could be useful, or you could connect, or you could humbly being available. And when, because anything, our energy, our resources, our inner resources, anytime that you move something inside you moves as well, and the energy starts again to be available and circulate, so it's I think the most important thing. And even if you are in cities, there are so many groups and things of help, of support that have been started. Is not to believe that in isolation of despair you are going to kind of find a way out. Is to connect and to offer something, because by offering, by this movement, you are going to start flowing again. And with this flow, the what can happen, we never know, because the world, I think, what the COVID and this time has offered as an opportunity is to reconnect with the mystery of life. Life is a mystery, and we are kind of walkers, passengers of this mystery. So there is always something that you can't imagine that can happen, the next day. So it's just to surrender and do the next step, and something will open up, surrendering to something that can come to you, And I think that at Sinal, giving my own example here, which has been like a bigger project that many times I had this sense, it was such a bigger project with challenges and things that we don't know how to handle, and always the inner move, the inner impulse I had was of surrendering to something. I said, the intention I came here is not for me, It's for all that I am serving here. I am serving this project. So wherever comes, I will embrace. And then something always starts, I start to see things that I hadn't seen before, you know. So, and miracles happen, no? It's there is this writer, this American writer that says, where there is love, there are always miracles. And that's what I really believe.
It's so, and it's so how you live, which is one of the reasons why it's so important that you're kicking off these conversations with us as the first speaker, Thais, because it really is what you embody. One of the things that I think is also very present at SANAL, and I'm reminded of this weekend with the elections, because, and as you said, movement and flow. So for me, I left England 3 weeks ago, and I had this deep, deep sense that if I stayed, I was going to get sick. It was a very profound message. I also had during COVID this amazing question that kept coming to me: who would I be if I wasn't me? Was the question. And that has stayed with me as a real mystery. Who would I be if I wasn't me? And here I am now in Costa Rica and starting to work in a regenerative project with a colleague. So this mystery, I was talking to someone the other day, and I think this is very important what you're speaking to, is I was asking someone the other day, if we stopped calling things masters of business and masters of international development in our studies, what would the feminine be? Because masters is a master of something, is a masculine term. And the person said to me, well, it would be mistress. And I said, well, maybe it's mystery. Maybe it is the mystery that we have to dwell in. And mystery is very different to uncertainty. Mystery takes an active participation. Would you say that, Thais? It takes active inquiry and being curious and your words, surrendering
And
to
humble. No, it also, you are humble because you say, I am part of something that is so great, so big, so complex, whatever, you know. So you just are there, and things start moving, and you can go to a place that you couldn't imagine. For me, this is resilience as well. No, it's not resilience, is not to plan everything, but just to be part of a flow, and then you will go somewhere else. You know, like you flow with openness, humbleness, and joy, because where there is joy, there is attraction of joy as well. No? As everything, the law of attraction. No, you attract what you cultivate and what you are. No?
I think after this call, everyone's going to be signing up for your learning journeys in SANAL and trying to get to Brazil, Thais. Everyone wants a little joy. That's where we go. We're going to SANAL do Vale. And tell me the direct translation of SANAL do Vale.
And SANAL do Vale means synchronicity, sinal, there's innovation and joy, alegria. No, in Portuguese is alegria and joy. And I feel that the culture in Brazil also has a lot of that quality, no? Because people here, no matter the difficulties, there is it's a country that alegria is within the culture as well. So I think it's part of Brazil, in spite of all the problems we have and misconduct and all that. But I mean, people are joyful, and I think this is also can be contaminating, no?
Exactly. One of the things I found, I've been posting on Facebook for some days about my adventures in Costa Rica, and people have come back to me and said they can almost feel my experience. And I think this is one of the things I'm so appreciative of people joining these calls, because it's not that all of you are listening to Thais and I at the moment, but what we're wanting to radiate, our commitment is that we radiate out to the world grace and resilience, that you can feel this joy that Thais is speaking of and feel the vitality in her system. And energetically, that gets transferred. We women know that.
Exactly.
We're open systems, and we have these feeling systems and these sensibilities that enable us to feel deeply.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the grace, the word grace also has a double meaning. No, of course there is our grace, and of course we can, but also is the grace of being alive. You know, of being able to just live, you know, and to appreciate life, and to breathe, and to sense, and to be together. This grace of being, no, it's the joy of being and the grace of being, which I think is very important to recognize as such, you know, because when we recognize something also inside ourselves starts to move, because we start to see life not with all the shortcomings and deficit and what is missing, but also with the abundance. I mean, it's a shift, it's a mind shift, you know, that I think is what we need for these times, no? Like a mind shift in terms of how we perceive things. No, it's a question of perception, no?
Yes, absolutely.
How
And I
we
know.
change our perception. And this, if we start perceiving our lives as full of grace, no, it's all changes, no? I mean, it's all spiritual paths talk about that, no? If you don't do anything, spiritual work, whatever, just gratitude can just change your inner environment, you know, your inner system, just being grateful, no? And the gratefulness and grace are all part of the same realm. You know?
Absolutely. I want to pause here for a second, Thais, because we're at 20 minutes to the hour, and ask our participants if they can please put it into either the chat or raise your hand, and Elsie's going to call on you or read out your question. And if you have questions for Thais or for me, but mostly Thais, because I'm going to be hosting all of these conversations. So those of you that are going to participate in more than one will be seeing me a lot, but most importantly, asking Thais any questions you have for her, perhaps even specifically around the project that she's doing. And we haven't spoken a lot about the actual work, because I really wanted to focus on who these women are being. That'd be great, Elsie, if you can manage that and unmute the participants when they want to ask their questions. That'd be great. So firstly, just let me pause there for any questions. We'll continue, and then please, Elsie will manage that for on behalf of us. Thais, one of the things I remember when I was there was we talked about, from my background, sacred spaces and the importance of sacred spaces. And that's really how I came to this notion of grace and resilience, is that in a sacred space, which is also known as a liminal space. And I love that word. It's a liminal space, is the in-between and in-betwixt. It's neither in the past or it's not in the future. It's this space in between. So one of the things in that liminal space and sacred spaces that is really important is healing. And I know that you created the Healing Centre, and I think it's so important that in the election and President Biden, or the incoming president, has spoken about the healing of America. I think this notion of healing, which is also a part of your work, is very important. What have you seen when people come to Sanalda Valley? Because I know I witnessed people really coming there to be healed in their spirit, in their spiritual yearning, to make a difference and to do something that was of value.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen over the years, that all of us have healed, even I that had that intention and started the project. I've seen that there was so much, I see so many aspects of myself that have revealed and healed. And I think this is our path during this passage, during our life, the whole life, we are just in process of healing, reconnecting to things that we haven't seen, or that we could that were holding us back, from the past, or things that we couldn't know. But at Sinal, what I see is that most of the people, I see how much we are like constrained in our lives by what comes from all outside, what people want from us, or our careers want from us, or we think you have to be. And that many of the young people that came to Sinal, because over the years these 9 years, we have like 500 people or more that came here, is that they said to me many times that here they could feel that there was like a place for them to feel themselves, and reconnect to something that maybe they didn't know exactly what it was, but that relaxation of feeling safe to feel things that maybe you don't even know, because these are inner voices that we had to have the right environment to listen to them. No? And that's what they said to me many times, that they felt that they were healing that connection, no? Which is the most important, because it's the most, I think, the biggest deprivation. We talk a lot about poverty, the physical deprivation, the material deprivation, but the more profound deprivation is the deprivation of the connection to oneself, because this is the only thing we have. So I think that I've seen that Sinal has healed that channel, no, of connecting to yourself. And then it continues, no? I mean, it never stops. But once you connect it to that source of who we really are, and start to manifest in it, I think healing starts to happen, no? At all levels, physical level, because we then start to choose, which is better for you, for what you think. What is important for us now is that we don't have a prescription. No, the prescription is like hold people, care for people when they come, and let it open up and see what is best for you. It's what is the best medicine for this healing. And sometimes it's just being with yourself. Sometimes you need to improve your diet. Sometimes you have to exercise more. Sometimes you have to do more inner work. So everyone has an entry point to that healing path.
And do you think for women, especially Thais, because of your project, and Amira's asked a question to learn more about the project specifically, so I'd love you to spend a few minutes on that. But I think one of the things that I certainly can see is the connection to nature is one of the strongest healing forces that we have, our connection to nature and to Mother Earth. You've also made that connection with gender and women, and the climate change is the essential combination that women are, and I've noticed this myself, is that I've been saying recently that unless we address gender inequality and the honouring and respect, the rehabilitation of women into society in their rightful place, we will not address climate change. Because if we can't respect my own thoughts and feelings biologically, and how I've been socialised, is if women are not part of the conversation and are not respected, our mothers not respected and mothering, how can we respect and love Mother Earth? Because we're all part of the system. So I think this healing notion, this part of reconnecting to ourselves, all of the things that you've spoken about, but if you could spend a few minutes, Thais, just describing Sinal Diwali, what you created and what the intent is.
Yeah, Sinal is a regeneration center. No, I think that regeneration in the sense that is like it includes parts that have been like excluded, people, animals, the forest, our education, our flourishing. There are several dimensions, and we have been working especially with food, with the soil, food, and forests. We have worked with change agents and that kind of education, with the infrastructure and with hospitality. But I think in terms of women, no, and of course women have a lot, especially in this time, to offer to the world, because somehow, especially because of the care part and the capacity of the work of caregiving, no, these two aspects that Ryan Eisler talks so much about, has written books. I think it's a very important aspect besides the science, everything, but this is something that women bring, which is so important, because basically things need care, and women need to learn how to care for themselves, because what I find for most women that I've seen recently, in the past, but recently especially, is that most women that I know are very tired, you know, because there are so many dimensions of this caring that they have to offer and to meet, which kinds as we are, you know, everything is important, you know, everything is more, we are drawn to what is needed, to the needs of the others, and we don't know how to identify sometimes, you know, how to care for these deeper needs. And I find that one important thing for us to, like a basis for doing this caring work in another way, is really to take care of ourselves, but especially to rest, because rest is so important. And nature is such a teacher of that, you know, because nature has cycles. Nature has like when you go in and we go out, you know, you can't all the time be in a situation of giving. And I think a lot of women that I see today are in a burnout, because it's too much what they demand from themselves, you know. The world is demanding, but we demand as well. So of course we have the legislation, the advocacy work, but there is something inside ourselves that we have to cultivate, and to understand that what you do for the world is also what you are. So if you are overtired, whatever comes from you will be in a reduce. It won't be the same. It won't flourish the same as you imagine. So I think that the climate change work is connected to that work of rest, because this is what the earth has been stressed, you know, like us, you know, everything has been stressed to the maximum. So COVID has helped us to see that that is a hard lesson, that we have to understand that resting, and that there are cycles, and there is moments of being out and of being in that have to be respected, you know. And that's what I would say that would be a feminine contribution to these times, no?
Absolutely. Thanks, Thais. And Thais, can you describe the magnitude of the project, or not a project, the magnitude of the community and what you're actually doing, so people can go to the website, they can see the activities that you're involved in, and they can also, you have, I really want to make sure that people are aware that they can also contribute to what you're doing by donating to the projects, and they can be very specific about that on the website, correct?
Yes, and I mean, in Sinal we do, as we are inclusive, there are so many needs, no? I mean, the animals, it's like almost a miracle how we can include and integrate everything. So whatever money is given to the different initiatives, it will be used with in that perspective. No, but what we want to be at Sinal right now, so is to present ourselves as an example, no, how we kind of can take care, can be land stewards, no, and we have 200 hectares that are part of our property, in which we kind of take care of the water streams, the ecosystems, the animals that are here, and the community that is closer to what we are, where we are. And now we have the prototypes in which you kind of do healthy food with jackfruit and fruits of the forests that are here. But one of the things, our vision is to actually to bring our knowledge, what we have learned, our prototypes, to a larger region of 10,000 hectares, because we believe that these cells, you know, these big targets, ambitious targets that we have for climate change, for reforestation, and for that can only happen if we do that through hubs, you know, through these little cells. And that's what we want to to present as a model, as an example, no? And because I really believe in this diversity, no? That many of us have to get together and take care of localities. So I really believe in that as a form. I don't believe in a global organization that is going to do it all. Doesn't matter if the intention is good, but that created so many distortions of and paternalistic perception that we have right now in the world. So ones are very powerful and know everything, and others are disempowered and hopeless. And I think this is what we have to change. Everybody has a contribution, no? And so that's what I believe. So Sinal wants to be an example for that, and an example of inclusion, an example of leadership, for land stewardship, of caring for everything that is part of that space, of that container. So.
And Thais, I know we have another question. I know Catherine left. I didn't get to Catherine's question, Elsie. I can't see who else's hands up. Can you point, or can someone take themselves off mute to ask the question? Okay. Thanks, Elsie. Elsie was just saying Catherine had to leave. So, Thais, just to check in with everyone, is there anything else that anyone would like to ask Thais before we close out and do our closing of the call? Okay, great. Well, Thais, I just firstly want to say that this, the experience of having you on the call and reconnecting with you has enlivened me, and I hope it has for everybody else, because when we're talking about leading with grace and resilience, my ambition and my own purpose is that leading with grace and resilience will lead us to flourishing, a flourishing life for all. And that includes our planet, and it includes our own well-being, as you said. It starts with looking after ourselves, because who we're being, we take that beingness out into the world every day. So I'm just so appreciative of you being on the call. This recording will go up on YouTube when we're finished. So you can, you'll be able to use it, Thais, but everyone and anyone can now refer to the recording as it goes up on YouTube. And there's a question. So if there's, if you'd like to contact, Elsie's put into the chat Thais's email address. Thais, if you would like people to go to the website, or is there anyone, or are you open to having your email address up as well? Because we can let people know if they want to contact you directly.
Yeah, they can contact me directly also. It's she can have my email on the chat. I can put it also here.
That'd be great. And if you want to receive more information from Thais and what she's doing, please visit the website, which Elsie's put into the chat. And also what we are in the very early stages of talking about. I only just mentioned it to Thais today, because Thais was part of our FemQ, as I mentioned at the start, part of our FemQ summit, the very first one we did in Berlin, and also part of an organisation called Rising Women, Rising World, which is where I first met Thais. So your commitment to equality, your commitment to women has been going on as an activist for 40 years, Thais. So I just want to honour you for all the amazing work you've done, who you are, and what you're bringing into the world, because it's an inspiration to everyone. And we are talking about doing a FemQ in Costa Rica next year. So very early days, just to plant the seed. And Thais has said she'd love to do that. So I've got a yes from Thais. I've got a yes from my daughter, Rebecca, who is going to be our next speaker. And the reason I've chosen Rebecca as the next speaker is, firstly, she's been in lockdown here in Costa Rica. And I just want to mention this. She has chosen to live a life less traveled by many. She's a millennial who is now starting a global webinar, podcast series, and they're launching her and her friends. When we talk about mysteries and what's come out of COVID, she's working with 2 women that she's been working with for 4 months on creating something called Global Heroines. So Rebecca's going to be talking about the heroine's journey next week, and I'm excited that she's going to be part of that story. And she's a millennial, as I'm sure we all know, the young ones Thais and I are still active and going out into the world in our leadership. But also we know that as you do, you're fostering your community, Thais, the young ones who are coming in and need all the resilience and all the support they can get for the world that we've created. And they need to be new stewards of the land. We need to honour the women, and we need to bring our grace and resilience. So I want to close out the call and thank you everyone so much for participating and being part of this conversation. Mostly thank you to my friend Thais. Love you loads.
It was wonderful, and thank you so much, Karen and Elsie, and for the beautiful interview and questions. I indeed enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, my dear, and thanks for being with us. And is there anything else you'd like to say to everyone as a closing important message that we all need to be doing or paying attention to right now? Just one last piece from you.
Yes, I think it's to understand that we are all in the beginning. That's what I feel. We are in the beginning of a new cycle of humanity, in which we have to dare, not to be afraid of thinking things that are not right, and trust your guts, trust what your feelings and what we feel, because there is no coming to the edge and not being afraid to flew, because this is the time for it. If you don't do it now, when? So I think the times now are to dare and to be courageous and to do things that you would never imagine that you would be doing. Just to try, without judgment and without fear, but with giving you that freedom, that freedom of using this amazing experience that is life, to try things that you believe that represent the deep wish of your heart.
Thank you, beautiful Thais. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye,
Bye.
Karen. Ciao.
Bye.